Welcome back to the next episode of the CRM Show. This is a show where we talk weekly about all the latest AI news. Joining me today is my co-host, Chris.
Hello, everyone.
And Rod.
Hi, everyone.
Great. So, welcome back. How are you guys feeling today?
Definitely less tired than you must feel, Max.
Definitely, yes. I was yesterday at a finance IT event with a focus on AI called FinJS. And as a result, so my night was a bit too short.
That's really good. I mean, with AI, everything kind of just runs 24/7 anyway. So I guess your night and your day will only get shorter with AI. Today, I think we have a jam-packed, I would say, agenda. There are a couple of things that we want to talk about. The first thing, Sam Altman basically wrote this thing about the intelligence age. In there, he talked a little bit about what the world looked like. So we're going to discuss a little bit on that content. Second thing I think we're going to cover a little bit, it's on the state of AI growth. It's basically a report by Iconic Growth, which is a investor based out, I believe, in SF, and then they manage money for the rich people. And it's quite interesting to see their survey on different corporates, see how they're adopting AI. And then the third thing that we're going to talk a little bit about, it's around AI assistants, which is, the concept of agents. We have touched this before, but then there is a company that became the first one out the door to try to get this, which is Salesforce. And lastly, because of that, we kind of want to talk a little bit about, Salesforce, a recent Salesforce convention for themselves called Dreamforce, where they reveal a few AI stuff. So without further ado, let's dive into the first one that we're going to talk about today. The Intelligence Age by Sam Altman. So recently, Sam Altman published an article talking about how he sees that AI is developing. In that, a few things that come to mind was number one, after many years of development, the first thing he said was deep work worked, deep learning worked. That was literally that thing. And then number two, he also talked a little bit about how we're about 18 months away from general intelligence. I think we talked a little bit about previously, how do you define intelligence and how that comes about. So I guess the first thing really I wanted to get, your view, Chris, is around what are your, first reaction to the article in general, number one. Number two, also about this thing about how general intelligence is not far away. I'm obviously hearing mixed. I was attending a panel yesterday. People are saying that, it depends how you define intelligence. And also, it's not as easy to build a Jarvis for everybody, but love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Max, for sharing this article. I thought it was very inspirational, to be honest, and very upbeat and aspirational and optimistic. I think he has a point with his article around 10 years, 100 years ago, we could not envision where we are today. And I think that's very true. And I think he's really depicting this future of an AI in the pocket. And I think that's also not a new idea. I think every one of us have thought about, okay, what if we could have this AI like at the tip of our finger and really have presentations made in one click of a button and different chores done in just a swift little prompt as well. And I think we are getting, towards that. I think when it comes to really getting these complex workflows done, we're a little bit farther away.
What do you think, Rod?
I will take the contrarian view. And I would say that first, of course, Sam Altman is not just some unbiased observer outside, but he's interested that this vision comes true. So he's heading OpenAI. He has many investments in the space and so on. So of course, if we say, hey, the AI revolution will fail, then that doesn't look good for his legacy. But also, this is, let's say, like the opposite perspective of others, such as Peter Thiel, who for now, let's say more than a decade, he has been with more or less the same thesis that we have pretty much remained stale in progress. Nothing has changed besides something, a little bit of bits and so on, but the big things in humanity remain more or less the same since the 70s, maybe since the 60s. And one quote here, so from the Sam Altman article that gave me a lot to think about, was that he was saying that so we will have things that our grandparents will have imagined as magic. And I was thinking, but that happens pretty much all the time, right? Let's think about our grandparents' grandparents. And I was thinking, okay, so these are individuals who were born likely in the mid-19th century. And in that time, there was not really electricity. There was like the most advanced thing was the telegraph. So of course, so for them in the early 20th century, when their grandchildren were born, things such as the telephone, electricity everywhere at homes and so on, we have like complete magic. I have the impression that this happens across generations. So it's this thing of progress seems sometimes very slow, but when we look from a macro perspective, it's actually very fast what things are going on. So here on one side, yes. So I think he, of course, wants this to become true. But at the same time, I'm thinking maybe in fact for our grandparents, the change would have been much more drastic than, let's say, for our grandparents now.
Chris, I see you're smiling, so I will let you make a comment.
I was going to say, Max, I think you just opened a battlefield.
That's the whole point of the show.
Yeah, Rod, that is very true. And yet at the same time, I think what you're saying is, I mean, lots of things would have impressed our grandparents. True. And I think AI nonetheless is something that we all can look forward to. And in terms of adoption, I think Sam also makes that point in his article around like it's going to be an incremental, slow adoption. And I think back to probably 2007 when the first iPhone appeared, I think there were articles around, oh my God, nobody really wants to have a buttonless or keyboardless phone. I mean, typing is so difficult, etc., etc. Everyone was bashing around it, and yet where do we stand today? I mean, we're at iPhone 16 now. I think it's not special anymore to buy an iPhone because it's so normal and standardized, and there are so many other competitors and products out there to have a smartphone now. Most of them come with a bottom or with a keyboardless screen. And I think that adoption also took a bit of time to come. And I actually feel very optimistic about AI for that reason.
Yes, I mean, adoption will happen, it's happening and so on, but something that his article was missing, and also in general, I missed a lot from this very pro-AI upbeat views is, where is the role of humans in all this? Because he says something along the lines of our children will be learning from AI tutors that will be able to teach them everything in all possible languages at any time and perfectly and so on. I think, okay, so where does this leave humans? Historically, people have said, okay, we will move towards more and more creative jobs, and all of a sudden, pretty much everyone will become, say, like a content creator, a YouTuber, an influencer, or a coach, and this is what will be it. Here's something along the lines also of, so we will be doing things that we don't consider jobs so currently. And I'm thinking, okay, but what does that mean? Because we're saying we'll move towards creative tasks, but we're seeing that AI is becoming really good at creative tasks. Also, this idea of everyone will be now an influencer. I'm not so sure if you look at this week, we had a Meta conference where it was showcased digital clones for like influencers. So the idea is that if you receive a lot of direct messages as an influencer, then you can just put an AI that will answer to your fans, and they will not really know that it's an AI that they're talking to. And this is also with a 3D or a model view of your face. So also the idea of like swapping the creative human tasks, so being like a personality, and that people will like that and people will pay for you for that. Maybe long term that may not happen anyway. So I wonder, here in all this vision, where are humans left?
Max, how about you provide your perspective before I...
Well, I guess I'm the humans that left out, to be honest. Cool. Cool. I think yesterday when I was at a panel, I think I was listening to the same very similar argument around humans, right? So ultimately, humans still buy from humans today, but in the future, you might not. As you mentioned, Rod, like a lot of interactions that we have today with humans, they might get replaced with the AI. And then the next question that I guess I have in my head is, what's the difference between you talking to a person and you talking to an AI? To a certain extent, like intelligence, you're already there, right? If I were to call up and make an order, I cannot know the other person is either an AI or a person. Because it could be an AI that was talking to me in a more general tone, in a more general sense. So I guess that I think a lot of routine tasks can and will be replaced. However, on the other end, when you think about truly novel stuff, as well as truly critical decision making, I don't think we're there yet. This is where I think when Sam mentioned that in 18 months we'll get to that, I am quite curious what that will be like. because I don't think my decision making skills is extremely good. But I'm actually looking forward to what that AI would be like. Will it be able to, I guess, add on to what I lack of, perhaps? So I'm quite pro and excited about it, I must say.
Yes, and I think, Rod, your argument, or the argument that always is in the room, this pink elephant of what happens to the human when AI takes over, I think it's quite over dramatic and definitely lacks a bit of that time component to it. What do I mean by that? I think at the end of the day, human beings will evolve along the technology that is currently present and is getting adopted. I think we've seen this in a lot of other technologies, from, I don't know, your automotive car replacing a horse to the computer replacing secretaries, right? But I don't feel like we have less work, and I don't feel like we have more unemployment. So I believe it's a bit of a, let's say, two-dimensional view to say, okay, we get, like, humans will be redundant. I'm sure humans will make sure that they will stay relevant. I think that's sort of the first view on it. I think a second one, and we need to cut it because I forgot it.
I have to say something about that, Chris. I have to say something about, I have to say something about, so the idea that, so humans in the end find new things. Yes, again, like I think in the macro perspective, we all find a new equilibrium. There's always a balance. But in transition, there's a question, and the transition can take a couple decades, just like a data point that might sound a bit boulevard-esque. I have this acquaintance, and right now this person is unemployed. And so this person is in Germany. So the person went to claim social benefits. So you need to have an interview where they will explain you like the process and how that works and so on. This person was telling me that these interviews used to be one-on-one with the civil servant, but this time it was in a room full of people, and mostly academics, and mostly people from marketing. And this person chatted with the civil servant, and the civil servant was saying, yeah, right now we have quite a lot of unemployment among academics. And chatting also with the marketing experts that were there, the marketing professionals, they were saying yes, because AI, now a lot of things, there are no more jobs for that. So before we'll do copywriting, before we'll do something like this, now this is completely gone. So this might be just the data point, and this might be also like a bit of sensationalism. But nevertheless, I do think that we're starting to see that things are moving much faster. And also is a question, okay, what do we do with these marketing, so unemployed professionals who used to do copywriting and now they don't do copywriting? Should they become YouTubers?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think to Chris's point earlier, talking about the iPhone, the automobile, one thing I guess that's different in my mind is that we went from physical labor now onto, I guess, more of a mental stuff that we're working on, which is more intelligence on this side. And then I guess my question then, it's almost like after that, what would be the next thing that human would work on? So I do not know that yet, but it's quite interesting to think about that. I'm gonna use the biggest lie on Wall Street, which is not far away from here. This time is different. The question is it? Right. So I mean, I'm interested to see what would that become. So Chris, do you want to add to that or?
Sure. I remember my second point. I think even if Rod was right with his statement of, okay, it's doom time for humans. Now we get all redundant, etc. Even if that was true, I think the question is, can you stop this progress? And I think history actually shows us that human curiosity is something that is very, very difficult to stop. And I think it's almost like, maybe it's almost too late if you want to like take that pessimistic perspective, and it's already unleashed. Lots of people feel excited about this new technology, the possibility of deep learning, and there will be people going through it. And I think, yes, you can resist it and you can try to like contain it, but there are many, many more people that are willing to go and explore. And I think that's really what, in my opinion, also makes up humanity and human beings. And to your question, Max, what's going to be the next frontier when it comes to our work? Perhaps it's the idea generation, right? Perhaps it is the time where we actually come up with, let's say, original human ideas. And that might be the next frontier.
Cool. again, with that, we talk a little bit about human. Thank you so much. I think, just to recap, from an intelligence age perspective, I think we're all excited about it, but there is also the risks and the opportunity that we need to think about. I guess that's my biggest takeaway. And humans are always going to be in the loop, at least for now. Um, and if I were to shift gear a little bit, we talk about, the second thing, which is the state of AI growth. Iconic basically recently they did a survey on all the C-suite, around 200 plus companies, trying to understand where and how they're adopting AI. And I guess just a headline, right? So what's interesting for me was that in there was a chart where, this is no surprise, 91% of the companies that they surveyed are all in the US. 9% is in the UK, which is interesting. And then 8% is in the UK, and then 1% in somewhere else, and 0 point something percent in all other world. I don't know if that's really corresponding to what actually happened in the world from an AI development perspective, or it's just because that's their network. So that's number one. Number two, the highlight that I find interesting is that, at the moment, because it's so nascent, a lot of larger corporates are investing in both, which is infrastructure and application at the same time. It's almost like, they need to build their own picks and shovels in order to develop the right thing for their organization. So that to me is quite interesting. It feels like, we're still at that nascent stage, right? At some point, I think Chris, we talked about this previously, which is around how infrastructure kind of just get collapsed and then applications just flourish. Keen to see when that will happen. I think just a third highlight on that is on the application side. They were talking about deployment more for internal use cases today, especially from a large corporate perspective. And a lot of it comes down to HR, customer service, try to just make things easier, engineering and operations internally. I guess to that, maybe I'll turn to you, Chris, just to get a little bit of your thoughts. Is that what you're seeing in that adoption perspective? We talked about adoption earlier. And then, the barriers to entry is still very much on, I guess, more on the performance on the LLM as well, as per the report.
Max, first of all, thanks so much for pointing out a caveat to this report, which is very US centric, I would say. And I think this is something for the audience also to keep in mind. And I think the other thing is that I think the report also had 6 predictions for the future across 3 themes. And to me, it really feels like a good summary of what we've been discussing actually in our show, right? So they talk about the rise of specialized use cases. So we spoke about startups really focusing on one specific case, whether it's, customer service, chatbots, for example, as a very, very specialized use case versus building up yet another foundational model, which I think is also the second theme that the report is quoting as being really hard. And I mean, just in last week's episode, we spoke about how expensive it is to actually build these models up, and that you need 100 million in order to even start building another foundation model that probably isn't as well trained as the existing models. So it's really become a battle of the big companies and the big guns that actually do have the kind of funding. And then yet at the same time, we're also talking about, or the article talks about exponential growth and sort of like where this is coming from. And lots of it comes actually from enterprises utilizing maybe available foundational models, but in a proprietary way. What does that mean? It means to use it and enrich these models with proprietary enterprise data to really build an edge. And I think that's also something that we've seen so far when we talk to bigger companies and how they actually leverage AI.
Yes, I want to connect so this report to what we're discussing just now on the pace of progress where so we can talk about how fast or how slow this is happening, but what we're seeing here in the report, but also what I can observe in the industry is that things move much lower. So here in the reports, one of the problems that is criticized or is reported, there is a lack of expertise in companies. So people cannot implement this. For example, now that I was yesterday at this event, this is my second year at this finance event for IT experts. And last year, it was all about saying, yeah, we started exploring ChatGPT and doing some prompts. We still need to get approval and so on. So they were like 1 year later than everyone else in terms of GenAI adoption. This year, it was all about showcasing copilots, like pretty much so ChatGPT-like interfaces that are embedded For example, if you're like an investment banker, that you can chat directly on Microsoft Teams and ask, hey, can you please give me the latest stock price for Walmart? And then this copilot will pop up and say, oh, right now this is, and show like a chart or something. And in general, so this means that the finance industry in this case is at least 1 year behind. So what is like the current progress of state of the art in AI? Then also, when I talk to companies and so on, the type of use cases that they're having, the type of use cases they're showing, is also less like a very early, it's still very explorative. Another thing from the report that also I found interesting, again, shows how there's always dissonance between what we believe in and maybe what is happening on the ground is who are the vendors, what is being adopted. Where often we talk about alternative, newcomers, new cool models and so on. But for the enterprise and for this specific subset of companies being reported, which is primarily US based, pretty much everyone is using OpenAI, followed by Google, the Google platform, the Google models and so on, which might come surprising, right? So because we keep saying, and also often here in the show, we say, hey, Google is so behind, what's happening with them and so on. But on an enterprise level, because Google is already so trusted, so many people, so many companies have already implemented the Google Cloud in their infrastructure, in their environment, this is what they're adopting.
I find that fascinating. I think the Google point definitely is it's something that I guess I've been thinking about. About a decade ago, we kind of see Google as just a consumer brand, right? I remember there was even an article saying that, Google are not able to sell into enterprise, but it feels like they completely turned it around at the moment, especially on this, development on AI. I think it kind of just shows you like the amount of investments they have gone into from the infrastructure perspective. Super interesting. And then I guess one thing that I get out of it is the application ROI haven't quite reached the level that we would like yet. But that doesn't mean that it's not rapidly developing. And Rod, you mentioned about financial services. I can be pretty sure, I recently spoke to a couple of CIOs and COOs of the largest banks you can think of. And then, even for them, it takes time to even, I would say, approve those use cases and also takes time for them to implement. And because of that, there's a massive lag to what the state of art can be and what actually being adopted internally. So like the co-pilot thing is like we talked about it maybe about a year ago. Now everyone is on agent. That's at least, what I've seen so far on the AI growth. And, on the adoption that we talk about behind, so we recently have an article, if I were to move on to the next topic, which is, the article is like, move on Copilot, and then, there's a new AI assistant in town. And that is basically talking about this idea of agents. I must say, I recently saw a demo. I've become very, very bullish on AI agents simply because you could almost replace anyone or augment everyone's job with with an AI agent. And I'm quite, I would say, happy about that because there are a lot of things in my job that I don't really like to do. There are a few things that I really enjoy doing, but then there are still a bunch of stuff that we have to do because we don't quite like it. From that, connecting to what we have been talking about from intelligence age to AI growth, I wanted to get both your thoughts around how the agent market is developing and what you have seen so far. Number one. Number two, I would say define a little bit on the agentic market because agent is both an AI agent, which can act on behalf of you, but also think about the agency you have as a user that you need to have in order to adopt those AI solutions because you need to kind of tell your agent that you can go act on behalf of me. Just in case anything crazy happens, I'm liable. Just saying. So I guess those are, some of the things that I've been looking at, which is, really I'm trying to get to the opportunity and the risk of the overall agent market. Maybe I'll start with you, Rod.
So here we can see how this point of we see always a mismatch between what is happening, let's say the forefront versus what is general adoption, where now people are saying those who are at the forefront. Copilots, ChatGPT-like things, this is the past, this is already so completely obsolete. Now the new thing is agents, let's do it fast and so on. But also like kind of reality. So last week I organized a meetup exactly around agents. So in London, I had attendees coming, so who are building agents, agent startups, agent-related projects and so on. And also for like the listeners, what is like agents? Yeah, so like a quick recap. The idea is just that you can have multiple LLMs that are coordinating, so large language models that they can, let's say, like talk to each other, to put it in some way, and each of them has assigned like a specific task. So you have like a big project. Let's say that you need to have a list of, let's say, ideal contacts to reach out who need to be in the specific industry, and they need to have maybe like a phone number and so on. So it means that this will be like the task of a researcher that will need to go through the phone book and websites and so on, compile this, put it into an Excel sheet, format it, and so on. And this is pretty much something that can be automated with agents. Yeah? So like a team of AI that is working together for a specific final goal. And at this meetup, people were reporting that yes, that sounds great in practice, but in reality, this is really this saying that you are as strong as your weakest link. Meaning, if one agent fails at his task, then downstream everything fails, and pretty much like so the project that you gave, then it doesn't is not completed. It fails altogether. And this failure, it happens much more often than one thinks. It's something where not only the agent might not finish what it's doing, but might do it wrong. So might have like slight changes in its output that the next agent doesn't understand anymore. And as a result, everything collapses. So yeah, it sounds great, but so let's say like really getting it done requires not only like more practice, but also like more expertise. And this is still frontier things. And as a result, there are not many people that know how to do these things.
Interesting. I think the model collapse it's an interesting one. I think I heard it yesterday on the different panel that is still quite often the problem, right? A lot of the development is still a lot of model collapse that's going on at the moment. But because if you're not really in the weeds of it, you don't really see it. Because as an application user, I kind of see the end of it rather than the development of it, I must say.
Now, I want to just like a little caveat. So model collapse has a very specific meaning in machine learning and in science. So this is really like a task collapse. So model collapse would be rather when you get the same result. So for regarding how you ask.
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, when it comes to co-pilots and agents, honestly speaking, I had to like look it up, like what's really the difference. And I think in simplified terms, ChatGPT it gives you information back, and an agent acts upon that information to do a task. And to me, therefore, it is almost like an evolution. It's almost like the next logical thing where, let's say, this intelligence or this general intelligence, as we described at the beginning of the show, is obviously heading towards. And so to me, whether or not you call it a different term is just a technicality. I think the second point I wanted to make is maybe to your earlier point, Max, around adoption. And like, you were mentioning, okay, well, people take time to approve certain use cases. So this may not reflect the status quo of the technology, which I want to really emphasize here, because I believe, especially when you look at enterprises, the question is, do you want to be a first mover in a certain technology? And I believe for most of the companies, it's not necessarily an objective, because usually you're not a big enterprise AI company. You're usually a bank or an insurance company. So your core business is not necessarily that technology. There's no advantage almost to be at the forefront of a certain technology. And in fact, actually, it means more risk. Normally, if you're a big company, you are a public company, so you have shareholders that have a certain expectations, and the expectation is not now become a technology company and be great and cool in using AI, but rather it's, okay, can you deliver on your core product, insurance, banking, whatever it is, and can you reduce costs? So I think that's fundamentally, I think, a bit of a mismatch in terms of incentives of adopting innovation or technology. And then I think to your earlier discussion around model collapse, I think accuracy seems to be the biggest hindrance, apart from like readiness and org stuff. That's always a bit the problem when it comes to adopting new technologies. But quality and accuracy of whatever the models deliver, the agents, the co-pilots, is definitely still something where I believe lots of people don't have full trust yet that you can do it without quality checking. And I think, therefore, and maybe to Rod, your earlier point, this is probably still something where I believe it's a bit of an 80-20 thing, where 80%, we have a model, it gives you some intelligent answer, but really getting the 20% accuracy in it will probably take a couple of years.
And Chris, back to what you were saying regarding the difference between, let's say, like a ChatGPT versus an agent or a copilot versus an agent, examples that I have seen and that are tangible is, for example, vacation planning, holiday planning. So with ChatGPT, it will be something where it will say, what would be like nice places to have a vacation in southern Italy or something. And then it will come up and then it will provide a table with information of good cities where one can have a vacation. With the agent, like this is the next step of taking action on it and saying, okay, now I need to book the tickets. I need so to coordinate the flights, the hotel, everything is like arranged and so on. So it'll be pretty much like having your own trip planner, tour guide planner, and so on and so forth. Another case I have seen, I was playing with the tool the other day, and this was not, what was nice was that it was not specific just for like finance, but it was the generic tool. I could give you just a prompt saying, give me which stocks should I invest in based on the biggest losers of today. And with something like ChatGPT, now it's connected to the internet, but historically it would have been impossible because it will not have knowledge about the last previous day or the current day. So it will only be able to give me historic information about companies that could be potentially interesting. But this tool not only looked into the internet and then pulled what are the biggest losers of the day. Okay, this sounds easy. But then what was interesting was that it also looked into why were they the biggest losers of the day. So then, like the biggest one was a company that had lost like a lot of value. And turned out it was because a short seller report came out, so just recently and so on. So I was able to pull also this information and then prepare it and say, okay, these are like the biggest losers. However, you might not want to buy this one that is biggest loser because the short seller report came out, and this might be like a red flag.
That's really good. I think giving that contextual information sounds super interesting to me. I always like to know the why. I think from an agent's perspective, the agency for the agents to act on behalf of you is important, and it kind of just helps you to save your mind space because someone can just go and execute it. How many times you have thought about, okay, I need to go pay my bills now. Only if an agent could just pay the bill, mate. The money's in there. You don't have to go click it yourself, set up direct debit yourself. It kind of just makes those chores away a lot quicker. But at the same time, because it's touching, let's say, paying your bills, if they start paying less or more every single time, and it adds up, and it can create a little bit of a confusion or problem. And hence, the accuracy become extremely important, to Chris's point. And I think, even today, when I hear it internally with different colleagues and across different organizations, they were all thinking about, the performance of the model. More often than not, it is the one that is blocking them for now. They don't mind spending the time and the money. It's just that if it's not up to a certain standard, they can't release it and people cannot use it. And then I guess, Rod, to your point around the earlier, which is the sequential nature of having multiple agents to run a giant task, one thing after another. And because it's sequential, if you were to put one output into another input for another model, if one slight mistake, it will change it. I wonder, will it work if you were to make it run, I don't know, parallel, for example? It's like a designer are talking to a customer, but also talking to your business analyst, also talking to your coder. You almost create like a network that will prevent that collapse. I mean, these are all, I guess, semantics. Interesting for me. So if I were to shift gear a little bit, we talk a little bit about, different AI agents. There is recently the first company that came out with AI agent, and that, or should I say the first large tech company that came out with AI agent, Salesforce. And I think there is an article, basically talk about how Salesforce is the dark horse of AI. I find that quite interesting. And I just wanted to, get both your thoughts around this. Simply because we talk about, we previously talked a little bit about Meta, we previously talked a little bit about Google, NVIDIA, all the large tech companies and their AI strategy, but I don't think we touch upon Salesforce as much, and simply because they haven't been releasing much. So love to get, both your thoughts on this. I mean, if I were to collapse it as well, we could look into their latest announcement during their yearly convention, Dreamforce, on the different AI as well. So I'd love to get both your thoughts. I'll start with Rod, and then we'll go Chris to get your thoughts as well.
I would say that actually we've been talking more and more about Salesforce to the point that I feel it's something like a fixture in that So yeah, because for me also, like I've been following the company for a long time because this company was always very at the forefront of machine learning research, and they had really a really good team that were doing very exciting things. And somehow they are not seen now anymore as such. They're not seen as being part of the AI era, and this has had an impact on its so share price. I was just looking at it now, and then year to date it's only 7% up. And I can imagine that the company needs also like a narrative and position itself better. So that's why now this idea of agent force, this idea of we need to be seen as an agent company and so on and so forth. I wonder if this will so play out, if people will perceive it like that. But about the idea of agent force, the idea that now there will be like agent dedicated features in its software. What I find that the most fascinating thing is that it will open the door what is called usage-based pricing, meaning historically, when you buy software, like software as a service and so on, cloud software, you'll pay on a monthly basis by a number of seats. So say I have 100 employees, I need 100 seats, then I pay so much per month for each seat. But now what they are offering, or they want to offer with this agent for service, it is pretty much a performance-based pricing that they're setting it at $2 per successful task. And in this specific case, it's about, I think, lead generation. So each time that you have a successful contact with someone, thanks to this agent that is looking for people that might be relevant for you and so on, then you'll be charged so $2. And as a result, the more you use it, well, the more it scales. And this means that if only one employee at the company is using Agentforce, then this does not limit how much Salesforce will be charging, because if they're using it a lot and a lot of leads are generated, then this will just grow. This has been something that companies have tried for a while. So to have this variable pricing, usage-based pricing and so on, but has been a hard sell. So buyers are just used to buy per seat. So I do think that the fact that Salesforce is now doing a big scale usage-based pricing, that might have consequences across all the SaaS industry.
Definitely. And honestly speaking, listening to you, Rod, it makes me actually realize and appreciate how competitive the tech sector is, right? It's almost like as a tech company, you can't miss on any new technologies coming out, and you can't not be an expert and not sell it. And so therefore, maybe you're right by pointing out that it's a lot of narrative perhaps here. And of course, Salesforce hasn't really been in the boys club of AI, I'd say, or girls club. I don't know what's correct these days how to frame it, but basically, kind of not being in the game of AI. And isn't it funny though? Because I think for a lot of other industries, you don't have that case because your business and your core model is based on something else. And I think there was always this hypothesis in the room that startups would disrupt finance or banking or whatnot. But when you're in the tech space, yes, you need to have something. And if AI is the new kid around the block, then you need to somehow incorporate that into your value proposition, your cost base, leverage it, I would say. But I think to an earlier point, I would love the idea, and I know, Max, you're currently traveling at an awful time. We're doing this recording here for you. That imagine in just a couple of months or years, we would have virtual Max sitting here with us, an agent, having the thought processes that you have, Max, answering and communicating like Max, and do the show with your virtual twin, I'd say, huh? I think that'd be really interesting to see.
I would be very excited about it. It's almost like you have a chief of staff, but then in a virtual chief of staff, right? Basically, it runs my life for me. That would be so cool. Honestly, I would love that. Like personally, I enjoy having I guess at least something to help you to manage everything beside you. And I guess that's why, we have a lot of chief of staffs and sometimes even personal assistants and everything else because everyone else is focused on something. I think what I wanted to just to expand on is on the idea of what you were saying, Rod, which is the Dreamforce around the narrative, and also to Chris's point around tech sector is very competitive. It reminded me of one thing that Warren Buffett said. There's a reason why Warren Buffett doesn't like to buy tech related stock. One of the things he says that is that with all this cutting edge stuff, they have to spend a lot of R&D capital in order to stay competitive. And the whole thing about Warren Buffett is about sustainable competitive advantage, aka moat. And the way you get moat is when you create something that it will just sells itself all the time. And that way it will just grab a lot of cash into retained earnings from accounting speak perspective. And I think, when you mentioned about that competitiveness, it kind of just reminded me of that. And it's almost like, AI agent can come out as much as you want, but it doesn't change the fact that we are going to, chew gum with Wrigley's. It doesn't change the fact that, we're still going to eat Pringles as human beings. So it's quite interesting. I guess my question that to both of you is, I guess, how do you see some of the things that we're with more competitive advantage today change going forward, right? Because we talk about how it's more competitive in the tech sector, less competitive in the financial services or even in the consumer business. So I don't know. I mean, just to pick a little bit on your brain, with the AI stuff, are we going to see, new type of gum where people start chewing different type of gums that's I don't know, invented by AI because they're a little bit more generative? Obviously, I'm being very speculative here. I just thought it'd be good to, close on that a little bit, expand our mind a little bit, and also for our listeners, if you have any ideas, you know where to leave your comments down at the section below. But at this moment, Rod, what do you think? Chris, what do you think?
I think you're bringing up a really good point here, which is, does everyone now need to become an AI company? Like, are you falling out of grace of investors if you don't focus on AI as a company? And I think the answer is clearly you don't necessarily need to focus on it, right? And I think to just give an example, I mean, I worked quite a bit in the mining sector as well as like in the transportation sector. And no matter what new technology, smartphone, whatever comes, into the market, at the end of the day, you will always have physical goods to be moved from A to B or people to be moved from A to B. And this is something that I think I always start to appreciate again and again, that whatever we do here with our laptops, all the materials that surround us came somewhere from planet Earth, right? Like it was a raw material that was dug up from some very far remote place, shipped across all 7 oceans to be then processed and really land in your hand as paper, for example, right? And I think this is something where this to me is a moat, as you were saying, Max, right? Like this is always going to be that way unless we invent like teleportation or some other form of transportation means. But so long as stuff needs to be moved from A to B, so long I believe there are companies around that value chain that will exist and can or have a mode to operate their business model. I think where the competitiveness then comes in is really how well and efficient can you structure your operations. And I believe there, digitization, AI may play a role in form of automation or customer support or operations.
From my side, I want to take the perspective of the enterprise software players, so where I also think that we underestimate how entrenched they are, how strong this adoption and familiarity across industries is. Just taking the example of Salesforce, I would say that if you're a salesperson today and you do not know how to use Salesforce or you know how to use Salesforce well, then your career options are heavily limited. Salesforce is the operating system of anyone in a commercial organization. So therefore, even if their AI offering might be not advanced or might be very advanced, this is in the end for the industry, for the commercial, so vertical, pretty much secondary. On top of that, the members of the commercial organization, they want to take this expertise to other places. So they have also a benefit in saying, hey, I do want that AI, or in this case, like OpenAI or so, that it has some CRM features, because I need to learn that. And not only that, but also this is not really transferable to my new job. Whereas if I am the Salesforce expert, then I can also be Salesforce expert and take this everywhere. So we'll be seeing that a lot of this AI functionality, regardless how good or bad it is developed, it will be implemented directly into the software itself. And then the users of this software, in this case also Salesforce, but I can also see for others, so for all these ERPs, Oracle, SAP, and so on, you have there millions of individuals who have built their whole careers around just being an expert on this tool. And they will continue doing that. And as a result, it will be much harder for any newcomers to try to chip away market share from these players just because they say we are first or our agents are better and so on. So we should not really underestimate how entrenched all this enterprise software really is.
Perfect. I think it kind of reminds me of what we started earlier. I think it comes full circle. In the end, in the transition, humans still have a lot more to do before AI can replace us entirely. And with that, thank you very much, Chris Rod, for joining us today. Thank you so much for all our listeners for tuning in. Today we cover 5 different things. Just as a recap, we talk a little bit about the intelligence age that Sam Altman recently wrote. We talk a little bit about state of AI growth that Iconic posted. We talk a little bit about agents, the next gen AI assistant, and then we talk a little bit about Salesforce, which is the dark horse in AI at the moment. And with that, we always bring you the latest and the greatest AI news. And if you like it, remember to subscribe and share it with whomever that you think is interesting. And if you have any thoughts whatsoever, remember to leave us a comment. We always appreciate that. Thank you very much.
A new episode every Monday.
Bingo.